You listen to me. God is separating you. And yes, you. He's taking you out of the crowd, away from the noise, and positioning you where only the chosen can walk. This season isn't for the comfortable. It's not for the familiar. It's for those bold enough to trust the process, courageous enough to walk alone, and faithful enough to obey when no one else understands. If you want the destiny God has for you, you must be willing to stand alone, shine alone, and fight alone, because the chosen path is never crowded. You have to understand something right now. When God begins to separate you, it is not a punishment. It is not a rejection. It is a mark of favor. Too many people see separation and feel abandoned, but the truth is, God is deliberately placing you in a position where only He can meet you. When He moves you away from the crowd, He is saying, I am preparing you for what you cannot yet see. I am positioning you for a destiny that your current environment cannot contain. That's why it feels uncomfortable. That's why it feels lonely, because growth is rarely comfortable and destiny is rarely crowded. Think about it. Every leader, every prophet, every dreamer who changed the world had to walk through seasons of separation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. Joseph was thrown into a pit and sold into slavery. Jesus himself often withdrew to solitary places to pray. And in those moments, something extraordinary was happening. God was shaping their character, sharpening their vision, and deepening their faith. Separation is the divine training ground. It is where the ordinary is stripped away and the extraordinary is birthed. You might feel frustrated because it seems like everyone else is moving forward while you are stuck. But that is a lie of the enemy. Your season of separation is not a delay. It is a preparation. God is teaching you lessons that you cannot learn in the comfort of the crowd. He is pruning relationships, closing doors that would distract you, and opening spaces that will hold your full potential. He is ensuring that when your time comes, you are ready mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to handle the blessings and responsibilities He has for you. You also have to realize that separation demands trust. When you walk alone, it forces you to rely less on the approval of others and more on the presence of God. You begin to see that His favor is not measured by applause, likes, or recognition. It is measured by obedience. It is measured by faithfulness. And when you start embracing that truth, your perspective changes. You stop chasing people's validation and start chasing God's purpose. So, do not fear being alone. Do not resent the distance between you and those who do not understand your calling. God is separating you for a reason, and it is a reason rooted in love, vision, and destiny. This season is the soil in which your greatness will grow. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are being prepared for something so magnificent that the world could never contain it. And that preparation begins with walking alone, trusting fully, and embracing the favor that only God can give. Walking alone is one of the hardest seasons anyone can face, but it is also one of the most powerful. Many of us think that being surrounded by people, by validation, and by comfort is what shapes our faith. But the truth is, God often strengthens His chosen when they are alone. This is the season where faith is tested, patience is refined, and reliance on God becomes absolute. When you find yourself walking alone, it is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is a sign that He is preparing you for a level of purpose and leadership that the crowd could never handle. There is a unique kind of growth that happens in solitude. When no one is watching, when the applause is silent, and when the familiar voices are gone, you are forced to confront your own heart. You begin to wrestle with your fears, your doubts, and your insecurities. You begin to pray in ways you never prayed before. You start to trust in God's timing rather than your own understanding. And in that process, something incredible happens. Your faith is no longer dependent on the presence of others. It becomes unshakable because it is anchored in God Himself. Think about it. Every great story in the Bible, every chosen life had moments of solitude that prepared them for destiny. David spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves alone and uncertain of what the future held. Yet in those caves, he learned dependence on God, honed his heart, and developed courage that would one day allow him to rule a nation. Esther faced moments of isolation and fear, yet it was in her courage to stand alone that she saved a people. Loneliness is often the testing ground for leadership. Walking alone also teaches resilience. The world will not always understand your journey. Friends may leave, family may doubt, and critics will question your path. But the chosen are not called to follow the crowd. They are called to follow God. In those moments of solitude, your spirit learns to stand firm. Your vision becomes clearer, and your strength becomes internal rather than external. You realize that approval is temporary, but purpose is eternal. Finally, walking alone deepens intimacy with God. It removes distractions and forces a dependence that cannot be faked. Prayer becomes real. Faith becomes visible. Your relationship with God is refined and strengthened because there is nowhere else to turn. You begin to hear His voice more clearly, trust His guidance more fully, and see your path with sharper vision. So, embrace the season of walking alone. It is not weakness, it is preparation. It is not isolation, it is empowerment. The chosen do not stumble because they are alone. They rise because they have learned to walk with God as their guide, their companion, and their source of strength. Solitude is the classroom, and faith is the lesson. And when the world finally catches up to your destiny, you will stand unshakable, equipped, and ready for everything God has called you to do. When God separates you and calls you to walk alone, one of the most powerful things He is doing is revealing your true identity. You see, when you are surrounded by people, noise, and expectations, it is easy to lose sight of who you really are. You begin to wear masks to fit in, to please others, or to be accepted, but solitude strips all of that away. It forces you to confront yourself without pretense, without distraction, and without the opinions of the crowd. In that quiet space, your real self begins to emerge, and you discover the gifts, the strengths, and the purpose God has placed inside you. The world often tries to define you, label you, or tell you who you should be. But God's separation is a reminder that your identity is not found in the approval of others or the roles people assign to you. It is found in Him. When you are alone, you begin to see yourself the way God sees you, chosen, equipped, and destined for greatness. This revelation is crucial because you cannot fulfill your purpose if you are living someone else's version of your life. True freedom, true power comes when you embrace your authentic self, even if it means standing alone in a crowd that doesn't understand. In this season of isolation, God is also teaching you to embrace your uniqueness. He is showing you that what sets you apart is not a flaw, but a strength. The qualities that make you different, the ideas that challenge the norm, and the dreams that others can't comprehend are exactly what God will use to elevate you. This is why the chosen often feel misunderstood or isolated, because their path is designed for something extraordinary, something that most people cannot see or grasp. And when you finally step into your calling, those same qualities that once made you feel alone will become the very things that make you unstoppable. Being alone also brings clarity. Without the constant influence of others, you begin to hear God's voice more clearly. You start to understand His plans, His timing, and His purpose for your life. The distractions fade, and the lies of the enemy lose their power. In this space, you gain a deeper awareness of your calling, your values, and the person God created you to be. It is a season of self-discovery and divine revelation, a time when God is shaping your heart and aligning your spirit with His plans. So embrace this season of solitude as a gift, not a punishment. Let it reveal your true identity, uncover your hidden strengths, and strengthen your reliance on God. The chosen are not defined by the crowd, but by the Creator. And when you finally emerge from this season, you will do so fully aware of who you are, fully confident in your calling, and fully ready to step into the destiny that God has prepared for you. Walking alone may feel difficult, but it is in this space that your true self is revealed, and your extraordinary purpose begins to take shape. The path of the chosen is rarely crowded, and that is one of the hardest realities to accept. Most people are chasing comfort, familiarity, and the approval of the crowd. But when God calls you to something extraordinary, He often takes you on a road that others are too afraid to walk. It is a road that is lonely, challenging, and sometimes misunderstood. And yet, it is on this very path that your vision is sharpened, your courage is tested, and your faith is strengthened. The truth is, greatness is never convenient, and destiny is rarely paved with easy choices. The chosen must learn to embrace a road that few will travel, because the world is not meant to understand the calling of God. When you are walking a path that others do not see, it can feel isolating. Friends may drift away, family may may question your decisions, and critics may cast doubt on your journey. But that is exactly the point. The chosen are not called to conform to the crowd. They are called to follow God. And following God often requires walking in a way that defies human logic, social norms, and comfort. The path may be empty, but it is intentional. Every step you take alone is a step toward the purpose and destiny that God has uniquely designed for you. On this uncrowded road, your character is forged. The tests, the delays, and the solitude teach lessons that the popular path never could. You learn perseverance, patience, and resilience. You develop a boldness that comes from trusting God alone and a clarity that comes from walking without distractions. When others finally catch up to your level of purpose, they will see a person who is unshakable, equipped, and ready for the responsibilities God has placed in their hands. The journey alone is what prepares you for the life that is truly extraordinary. Being on a path that few can walk also teaches you to value the process over the applause. In a world obsessed with instant results, the chosen understand that timing is everything. God's plan unfolds at the perfect moment, and the seasons of waiting, testing, and walking alone are necessary to align you with His will. The road may be lonely, but every challenge, every setback, and every moment of uncertainty is shaping you for a purpose that is bigger than you can imagine. So do not resent the empty road. Do not long for the crowds that do not understand. Embrace this uncrowded path as a sign that you are chosen, that your calling is significant, and that God is preparing you for something extraordinary. The chosen are not defined by how many people walk with them. They are defined by their willingness to walk with God even when no one else follows. This is the road of destiny, and it is yours to claim. Walk boldly, walk faithfully, and walk knowing that your journey alone is creating the strength, vision, and courage you will need to fulfill your God-given purpose. One of the most profound lessons of walking alone as the chosen is learning to depend fully on God. When you are surrounded by people, it is easy to rely on their advice, their support, or their validation. But God's plan for the chosen often requires removing those supports so that reliance shifts entirely from man to the Creator. This is not a punishment. It is a divine strategy. God is using your season of loneliness to cultivate a dependence on Him that cannot be shaken by circumstances, opinions, or opposition. True strength is born not from comfort or crowd approval, but from a heart fully surrendered to God. Walking alone teaches you to trust in God's timing and His wisdom rather than your own understanding. In solitude, you learn that prayers cannot be rushed, plans cannot be forced, and faith cannot be faked. When the world is silent, God's voice becomes louder, clearer, and more powerful in your life. You begin to see that His provision is always sufficient, His guidance always perfect, and His love always constant. The chosen are those who do not rely on what they see in the moment, but on what God has promised for their future. Every step alone strengthens that trust and deepens your intimacy with Him. This season also removes distractions. When you are alone, you cannot hide behind the noise of others' opinions, the pressure to conform, or the temptation to follow the crowd. Loneliness forces focus. It forces clarity. It forces obedience. You begin to recognize the lies that have held you back, fear, doubt, comparison, and you start to confront them with the truth of God's word. In this space, your spirit grows resilient, your vision sharpens, and your faith matures in ways that would be impossible amidst the chaos of the crowd. Dependence on God in solitude also teaches humility. You begin to realize that your achievements, your breakthroughs, and your victories are not by your own strength, but by His. This understanding is transformative because it reshapes your perspective on success. You stop measuring your life by worldly standards and start measuring it by divine purpose. Every challenge, every test, and every moment of isolation is designed to teach you that God alone is your source, your refuge, and your strength. Finally, this dependence cultivates power, not the kind of power that comes from status or popularity, but the kind that comes from a heart fully surrendered and aligned with God's will. The chosen rise not because of how many people support them, but because of how faithfully they follow God when no one is watching. Loneliness becomes the classroom, and dependence on God becomes the lesson. When the world finally recognizes your calling, it will see a life that cannot be shaken, a faith that cannot be broken, and a destiny that cannot be denied.